Tell me about a time where you had to solve a complex problem for a customer. All right, everyone. Hey, my name is Mohammed Hussein. I am the host of today's mock interview. A little bit about myself. I'm a solutions architect at Dropbox. Prior to this, I was working as a solutions architect at Salesforce for the last 2 years, and that's where I met this lovely individual, Josh Lopez. He was one of my coworkers over there, also working as a solutions architect over there. So, Josh, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sounds good. Yeah, Mohammed, thanks for having me. My name is Josh Lopez, currently in the solutions org at Twilio Segment, but also worked in solutions at Salesforce as well. That's where I met Mohammed. Previously, I worked in the small medium business market, focused on kind of the central region of the United States, and that's kind of where I got my experience in pre-sales, having Salesforce experience in the past, but currently working in a totally different segment now.
Awesome. So today, Josh and I are going to be going over a pretty common interview question that a lot of solutions architects get while they're going through the behavioral portion of an interview. This could either be asked by a hiring manager or by a lead or senior solutions architect. And the question is, tell me about a time where you had to solve a complex problem for a customer.
Yeah, I mean, in my past, being in as a solution architect, there are a lot of different complex problems that kind of came across my way, especially working in the central region of the United States. We have a lot of similar companies, whether it's supply chain, manufacturing, a lot of heavy operations based companies that have a very low margin of error that affect, their margin of profit, right? So that's really important to understand. One of the customers that I worked with was a company that did last mile delivery for fitness equipment. So think Peloton, treadmills, all the way to consumers that get delivered these products to, new gyms that might need those products as well, equipment for, their new opening gym. Now, when it comes to logistics and supply chain is a very contentious topic. There's a lot of different ways that you can do it, and it's very complex, right? It's a huge network of decisions that need to be made. And they came to us saying, hey, we want to find a way to deliver all of our products that are coming from our partners efficiently, because we're doing last mile delivery, we're taking it to all the way to the consumer. How do we do that with Salesforce? Now, the thing is, if you look up Salesforce last mile delivery, we don't advertise, hey, we're going to be the greatest delivery platform in the world for our customers. But the thing is, we have the technology to do it, whether it's scheduling, making things more efficient, understanding, hey, how many treadmills can I place on a truck, for example? Those types of questions are questions that we like to hear and we like to answer here, as a solutions architect. So we're kind of the problem solvers there. But the main thing was really understanding what is their business process, how do they operate from point A to point B with getting something delivered, what are the problems that they're experiencing today. They did a lot of things manual, and we were there to go through the process of understanding that and hopefully architecting a solution.
All right, awesome. So, Josh, could you tell me a little bit about some of the stakeholders that you were working with, both internally and externally?
Yeah, I think that's a great question because it was an important part. But something that's really complex, regardless of what product that you're working on, it's important to understand, hey, uh, who am I working with externally? So externally, we worked with the CEO, the president, the chief operations officer, and the director of operations. Because it was such an operation heavy business, and ultimately we would be affecting their bottom line, we wanted to make sure that we were talking to their pain points and talking to their value. The second thing that's really important as a solution architect is understanding what resources do you have on hand, right? Typically, a solution architect will work with an account executive, a salesperson, to support the technical side of the deal and getting that technical win that you might have that we often talk about. But we have a lot of you might work with a lot of industry experts or have worked these types of deals before. So really what I did was I looked deep into the bag and tried to find, hey, what industry experts that we have, whether it comes from logistics and supply chain to transportation, or even people that have worked these types of deals. So I worked with two other people internally at the company to bring in. And we also brought in an implementation partner that has done a complex implementation like this. Because one, we want to make sure that we're providing the right point of view when we're ultimately giving this proposal, and also instilling confidence in the customer that, hey, we've done this before, we can do it again, and we're going to make it even better this time.
Now, when a lot of the times, people hear, supply chain, logistics, fulfillment, last mile, and whatnot. Um, a lot of the times they're doing these things manually, which I think you alluded to. Were there any hesitations that you saw from the customer of making that shift from doing everything manually that they're comfortable with and whatnot, and then completely using technology to like digitize the process?
Yeah, hesitation is very, very normal in when it comes to digital transformation, right? Especially in this type of digital transformation where they're going from nothing to, you know, maybe like what they might see as a Ferrari of, digital transformation. This is really big for them. So we needed to be sensitive to the process that they're going through, but also understanding that, hey, regardless of what vendor they choose, it is going to be a pricey implementation. This is not something that is very simple, it is very complex. So, how do we as solution architects understand the pain at multiple levels? Whether it is one, hey, how much time are you wasting on doing these things manually? Two, how many times are you having these mistakes where you end up scheduling a person who might be on vacation? You might be scheduling a truck that is out of commission, or you end up scheduling 8 treadmills on a truck that fits only 6, right? And last but not least, even going a deeper level of, hey, what happens if you don't get this done, right? Your competition in the Northeast is tightening up, and a lot of them are providing much more digital experiences and are providing, SLAs or service level agreements that they can get these products to their customers in much faster time, whether that's 30%, 20%, whatever it may be. What happens if you don't get this transformation done? So as a solution architect, you work with your account executive to understand, hey, if you do nothing, what happens? And is that cost much greater than paying the cost of getting a software in place, right? So that's really what we had to do. There was a lot of hesitation. And I think we really nailed it when it came to understanding and defining those pain points and using that to create a value statement for the customer.
And then the last question that I have, Josh, you've explained this and this problem that you solved, super complex. What would you say that throughout this entire process, what would you have done differently? How would you have sort of engaged maybe some of the stakeholders, or how would you have done it a little differently?
I think that there's a few different things. I think the main one that sticks out to me is just a reminder that being a solution architect is not just a technical role, getting the technical win. It is a sales role, right? So
Right.
being able to be comfortable in your skin to understand the sales process and the sales motion is important. One of the biggest things is defining who the authority is. An authority is a decision maker, that is a person who is going to sign off and pay for the software. And in this case, this was the chief operating officer. Now, in our sales process, we didn't include the chief operating officer because he wasn't interested in joining this call until maybe a month later. Now, that is a big, yellow flag, I would call it, right? How do we get someone that's important, that's going to be the decision maker earlier than later so that we can understand their pain points? Because a pain point between a director and maybe an operations manager versus the CEO, it might be aligned in some way, but the specifics can be different. And I
Right.
think if we included the chief operation officer a little bit earlier, and I pushed my account executive to get them earlier than later, I think the deal would have closed faster, right? Or we would have had a higher chance of closing that deal. But it was a little difficult because we didn't. So it's a reminder for me to make sure that I'm flexing my skills as a salesperson, understanding the sales motion of the company that I join, and being able to support my account executive throughout that process. Could have done better, but that would be my biggest feedback for myself.
Awesome. Well, Josh, thank you so much. It was really great, hearing about your experiences and whatnot. All right, and interview role play over. Josh, how do you think that went?
Yeah, I think it went well. I think for the first question, I could have done a little bit of a better job of kind of teasing what that solution that I provide, like what impact did I bring, what was the outcome, right? I think I was missing a little bit about that, but in the follow up questions, I definitely got there. That would be my biggest feedback for myself. I I would have loved to give a little bit more metrics as to, you know, what did we do? How many demonstrations did we do? How many discovery, like quantify the amount of time that was spent with
Yeah.
internal and external stakeholders, provide some like, hey, this was not just a complex project um, when we're thinking about it, but we actually put in the time and it definitely was very difficult. So I definitely could have think done better with quantifying some of the work that I did and the outcome. But I generally, I think I told a good story of, a complex problem that I solved.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, like, in terms of these interviews that we do as solutions architects, and really any sort of behavioral interview that you do, whether it's for software engineering, product, it's all about good storytelling. And Josh, I think you completely nailed that aspect of it. How you went through, like, what was the discovery process like? What was the demo process like? How did you build that trust with the customer throughout the entire process? How you worked with your internal technical stakeholders, you worked with an implementation partner, and then how you ultimately were able to kind of win the trust. And then also talked about what you would have done differently, which I always think is a great way to help yourself improve overall as a solutions architect. Learning from maybe some hiccups you had in the past, and then being able to implement them in the future, I think is really big. I'd say, like, my only really piece of feedback that I'd give that you haven't mentioned yet, and I'm at fault for this. I think everyone is. And I just did it there, focusing on and being cognizant of your ums, your you knows. I literally just did it like 10 seconds ago. So yeah, that part is always tough. And of course, doing a mock interview like this can always help people with being cognizant of when they're using those filler words, right? So that's always important to know. And then, of course, this video can also be a really good resource for people who are interviewing for solution architect roles to kind of pick that up. Seeing these example videos can maybe give them some inspiration on how to approach these questions, practice these questions with other solutions.
Yes. And I would also say one thing to think about when going through this solution architecture interviews, right, is when they ask you something about, hey, what is the most complex problem that you solved? If you come from a technical background, it is so easy to jump in and be like, oh, let me tell you about this crazy complex thing that I did, and maybe this algorithm that I built or this custom thing that I coded for the demonstration. That is all great because it shows the technical chops that you have, but be aware that the solution architect role is not just a software developer role. It is not just a technical role, right? That there is a sales motion that is involved. It is showing your people skills, your soft skills, your business acumen, all wrapped into the complexity of the deal, which might include technical and sales. So something important to think about when you're answering these types of questions.
Yep. And I absolutely loved how you alluded to that too when we were doing the mock interview, that it's not just about knowing the technical chops. It's also focusing on the sales motion, how you're working with your internal and external stakeholders and whatnot. Prioritizing bringing in that decision maker in, whether they are technical or not, and how you're able to communicate with them. But yeah, Josh, thank you so much again for joining us here today and absolutely nailing the question. If you guys like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and comment below on maybe some other questions you want us to go throughout this solutions architect interview series. But with that, have a good one, guys. Thank you.